There are people who would say, well, if you are intelligent, why do you believe that old book? Why do you believe the Bible? In fact, Richard Dawkins has gone on record as saying that anyone who teaches their children about God is guilty of child abuse. Well, as I say, I've lived a very lucky life. I was brought up in India, which in itself is good luck. Fascinating place to grow up. And in 1958, when I was just 9, my parents travelled from India to England. They wanted to visit the land, or rather my father wanted to visit the lands of the Bible, and Mum had to go along. And where Mum and Dad went, the rest of us had to go too. And it certainly was an amazing trip. You couldn't do it these days. This is us in the Khyber Pass on the way into Afghanistan. And you wouldn't get there nowadays without being blown up. Later on, we wrote on the side of the caravan, which we made ourselves incidentally, India to England. Because we had so many people asking us, what is this? Where are you going? What are you doing? So at least it saved a few questions. The Afghans were friendly, but their roads were not. And when our tow bar broke, we were rescued by a group of Afghan soldiers. And once the tow bar had been repaired, just before we drove off, I posed with the soldiers. There we go. On our way back, we had to follow a more direct route because it was getting late in the year. Our furlough was nearly over. We had to hurry and get home. And so we had to go through some rather mountainous territory. And that was the very first time I had seen snow. I was fascinated the first time I saw it. But by golly, I learned snow is cold. We slid backwards on that pass, and the vehicle's jackknifed, and that's the only thing that stopped us going over the edge. We only had a two-wheel drive vehicle, but fortunately we were able to be rescued by four-leg drive. The farmer came and towed us out. Well, Dad said we're going to see everything on the trip so we never have to come here again. The result was that it took 9 years before we went back again, in 1967, and this time with a four-wheel drive vehicle and a lighter, better-made caravan, based on the practice of the last time. And this time we added in a few of the places we'd missed out on. We went down to Persepolis, we went up to Mosul, to Nineveh, we went through Syria and Turkey, we went into Egypt. And since then, well, 67, that was the year of the Six-Day War. And we were caught up in an anti-Western riot in Amman in Jordan. We were lucky to escape with nothing more than a broken window. We were actually in Jerusalem on the day war broke out, and we heard all the bombing start. We decided that we would be healthier off the other side of the Jordan. We crossed back into Amman. We got there just as the Israeli Air Force arrived to destroy the Jordanian Air Force. It was an interesting experience. But as I say, since then I've been back many times. I've seen so many changes. I mean, this is Herat in Afghanistan. The first time we went there, those 6 minarets just stood in an open field, and the dirt road wound in between them. Now, Herat has expanded to swallow them up, and the Russians got involved in a battle there and destroyed one of the 6. That's why you can only see 5. It's a shame because they go back to, I don't know, the year 800 or something like that. Amazing. And this, I remember it well. It's where I bought an aerogram. And I had to sit down and hastily fill out that aerogram quick. Do any of you remember aerograms? Some of you young people, you won't know what I'm talking about. But in those days, you won't believe this, but we didn't have mobile phones. And the only way of writing to this pretty girl that I'd met in Australia was to buy a special piece of paper that was lightweight, and you wrote whatever you wanted on it and posted it off. It was at a standard price. So I had to fill this thing out. I had half an hour to do it. If the letter seemed a bit rushed, it was. There we go. Well, I want to take you to 3 of the places we visited in Iraq. I mean, I could spend the rest of the day telling you about the relationship between the Bible and the Middle East, but I want to take you to just 3 of the places we visited and use them to illustrate some of the things about the Bible. The first is down here in the south, the city of Ur, then Babylon, and finally, right up in the north to Mosul, which is where Nineveh was built. So let's start off down the south with Ur. And Ur is chiefly famous because of this enormous ziggurat. It's the best preserved ziggurat, or was the best preserved ziggurat in the entire Middle East. Now it is the best restored ziggurat in the Middle East. This is what it probably looked like when it was brand new. It had a temple on top of it. This is what it looks like today. But when we first saw it, this is what it looked like. And the reason why it is in such a bad condition is all down to the British. Because after wonderful discoveries had been made at Nineveh, the British Museum wrote to the English consul, the British consul in Basra, a man by the name of Taylor, and said, look, there's some ruins near you, can you go and excavate there? Excavate? He didn't know how to excavate, but you know, the government had told him to do it, so he did it. He went and hired a couple of hundred Arabs, and all he could think of was digging down inside this thing and destroying it in the hopes of finding something inside it. And so he destroyed it. Fortunately, he got this far and then his money ran out. And so there was enough left to preserve, but it was originally standing 2 stages high before he got at it. In 1922, Ur was properly excavated by Leonard Woolley. Now, his work set new standards in scientific excavations. He worked for 12 years, and just to give you an idea of how modern this man was, in those 12 years, he took, you ready? I want the big, he took 2,000 photographs. Yeah. When my wife and I went on a 5-week holiday to Norway a couple of years back, we came back with 7,000. But of course, in those days, you didn't go click and look at it. You went click, and then you went off and developed it with the chemicals, you know, probably on a glass plate. So yes, it was quite amazing. He even enlisted the Air Force to take some aerial photographs of the ziggurat and of the site. Those were the heroic days of excavations, when you would have 200 or 300 workmen working under you. And the things he found were so astounding that people would actually come out to Iraq just to see what he was doing. And among them was a young socialite who came out and just to see what he was doing, and fell in love with his assistant, a man by the name of Max Mallowan. That's him there. And that, oh best beloved, is how Agatha Christie came to write Murder in Mesopotamia, because she ended up marrying an archaeologist. I think it was Agatha Christie who said that it's always good for a woman to marry an archaeologist, because the older she gets, the more fascinating her husband. Now, working with these Arabs, Woolley recognized that they were just plundering. And so when he found the burials, the cemetery, he stopped work and he transferred them somewhere else. And he said, we're going to train you guys and then we'll work on the cemetery, because there's going to be all sorts of things that we find in the cemetery. And so he excavated, and among the places he excavated was the temple of Inulmak, and down here the residential area, and he actually dug down to a period that was of the time of Abraham. And so one of the houses, there's nothing to link any of the houses with Abraham. No Abraham was here scrawled on the walls. But one of the houses has been picked by the Iraqi authorities as Beit Ibrahim, and it's now a place of pilgrimage for the local Muslims. Now you may be saying to yourself, yeah, well, all very well, like Monty Python, what did the Romans ever do for us? What did the Sumerians ever do for us? Well, you know how we do our maths to base 10? 10, 100, 1,000, right? The Sumerians, these primitive people, did their maths to base 60. And that is why we have 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute, and indeed why we have 360 degrees in a circle. I mean, did you ever stop to think, why don't we have 100 minutes in an hour? We have 60 because it can be traced all the way back via Babylon to the ancient Sumerians. Well, Sir Leonard Woolley was very glad that he had given his workmen those 4 years of training, because when they started work on the cemetery, almost at once they struck gold, literally. He found the royal tombs of Ur, which became better known as the death pits. Because inside something like this, there would be up to 83 bodies. The king or the queen, plus all his or her attendants, guards, musicians, you know, what have you. And some of the things that were found were incredible. This, for example, is a lyre or a harp, a bull-headed one. Now, when Woolley found it, of course, all the wood had decayed away. But what he found was some holes in the ground, and he poured wax or plaster of Paris or whatever it was into them and let it set. And that is how he knew what the thing actually looked like. And he says this one has a bull because it's the biggest one we found, and so we think that it's probably a bass instrument. So it had the bull's head to make it sound like bass. He found this, a ram. It's got golden head and legs, ivory wool, lapis lazuli around its neck, and a bitumen in the middle. Now, the whole thing was squashed flat by the weight of the soil that had pressed down on it. And Mrs. Woolley gradually worked, I mean, look at the branches there, gradually worked them back into shape using the back of a darning needle, not a darning needle, a crochet hook, and a knitting needle. You have to gradually work it back into shape and put it back together. You can see that, it's in the British Museum. Also in the British Museum is what's called the Standard of Ur. Now again, all the wood had decayed away, but he poured in the wax and, you know. Underneath it has a hole, and he presumes it was held on a pole and carried in procession. And on the sides, now I've got both sides here, one on top of the other, you have in the top 3 registers, peace. And in the bottom 3 registers, war. Incidentally, notice up here, there's a chap playing a bull-headed lyre. Another thing that was found was the golden helmet of Mescalandug. Again, squashed flat. Now, in case you think I'm exaggerating, here is a woman exactly as she was found. Squashed flat, that's her skull. All right? But Mrs. Woolley found another one. I mean, they kept this one just to show you what they were contending with. Found another one and put it all together. And this is a headdress of Queen Shubad. Yes, amazing. Well, there you go. Now, one of the most remarkable things that Woolley did, like all archaeologists, he wanted to find out how old the site was, and you do that by digging a pit all the way down until you get to virgin soil. So he set his workmen to digging a pit. And they dug down and down and down, and knew pottery and what have you, and then they came to some clean clay. They said, we've reached the bottom. And Woolley dropped down a tape measure, and he said, no, you haven't. You are still higher than the level of the surrounding ground. I don't think you've reached bottom. Keep going. Well, the workmen weren't very happy about this because the clay was just absolutely sterile. It was just clay. And they were being paid a daily wage plus a bonus for anything they found, and they weren't finding anything. But they carried on digging through 11 feet of clay, and if you've ever dug in clay, you'll know that was hard work. And when they finally got down through 11 feet of clay, they found some more remains. And Woolley said, I think it's a flood. And his wife said, yes, it's Noah's flood. Now, it wasn't, because they found similar layers elsewhere, but all in different periods of time. But it's known as the flood pit. When I visited in 1958, well, in 1967, this picture was taken, a lot of sand had blown down in. I don't think it was 64 feet deep. It was probably only about 40 feet deep. But there's me standing at the bottom. And I want you to notice my feet, please. You can't see them because they're sunk down in the dry dust. There I am again, all right? It's absolutely dry. 40 feet down, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, I didn't measure it. 40 feet down, and it's absolutely dry. And this is typical of the ancient sites. For example, here is the site of Uruk, dry as a bone. This is the site, here's excavations at Uruk. This is the site of Kish, which is 8 miles east of Babylon. Dry as a bone, no matter how deep you go. Here is Nippur. It was one of the earliest Sumerian sites. It was actually founded on a marsh. And it kept getting washed away by the floods. But today, it's as dry as a bone. And here is Eridu. It's claimed to be the oldest city in the world, and the excavators know that because they've dug right down to the bottom, and it's all dry. Now, the reason why, I have a reason why I'm emphasizing this bit about it all being dry. Because the next place I want to take you to is Babylon. There you have the Ishtar gateway into Babylon. They've given it a coat of paint since I last saw it, because this is how it was when I saw it. And I thought, wow, tremendous. Except when I walked up to it and touched it, I found it was plywood with a coat of Dulux. Bit disappointing. This is the real thing in the Berlin Museum, Pergamon Museum. It's beautiful. Glazed, blue glazed tiles, shiny. Wow. You can see here how the lines on it are actually molded in relief as well as in color. You can also see all the bits that go to make up the bricks. The excavator sent back thousands of these fragments. And these chaps down in the basement of the museum had the job of piecing them all together in the biggest 3D jigsaw that there has ever been. The excavator was a German called Robert Koldewey, and he worked there from 1899 until the outbreak of World War I in 1914, when the place got a bit too hot for him. He wrote his book, The Excavations at Babylon. I have read it in translation, I hasten to add. Not in the original German. It is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. This is a photograph of his work, and you'll notice how they were transporting the dirt that they had dug away from the site. They had a little railway. Can you see it? It was still there in 1958. And I had tremendous fun pushing the truck up a slight slope and then riding it down while my parents traipsed around the ruins. I had something worthwhile to do. But of course I've been back since when I was slightly more mature in my tastes. As well as lions, they also had the walls decorated with Sirash, which is a mythical beast with the hind legs of an eagle, the front legs of a lion, the tail of a snake or a scorpion, and the head of a dragon. You wouldn't want to meet him on a dark night. Some of those Sirash are still in position, but they've lost their glaze. That's why Koldewey didn't take them back to Berlin. But I want you to notice something. One, it's brick. And two, in between the bricks is bitumen. Because they didn't use cement, they used bitumen to stick their bricks together, because in Iraq you have pools of oil, pools of bitumen on the surface of the ground. It's just as common as dirt, which absolutely astonished Moses when he came to write the book of Genesis. Because Moses had been brought up and all he ever knew was Egypt, where you don't have bricks because you don't have enough trees to burn the bricks. You have mud bricks, but you don't have baked bricks. So everything's made of stone. And the stone is joined with lime plaster, not with bitumen. Bitumen was only used for jewelry. All right? And so when he told the story of how the Tower of Babel was built, which may have been at Babel, which probably was at Babylon, he records the astonishing fact that these weird people said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." Wow! And they used brick instead of stone and bitumen instead of lime mortar. What freaky people. And yet, he was, he probably didn't believe it, but he was just recording what he told, and it's true. because, I've been there, I've seen it, you saw the photograph. They use brick joined together with bitumen. Incidentally, I don't know if you've ever looked at a brick, but many of them have or I think all of them have a stamp in them saying who made them. LBC, London Brick Company or something. Well, it's the same in Babylon. All the bricks have a cuneiform inscription. And nearly all of them on the inscription say, I was made by King Nebuchadnezzar. And that absolutely astonished Robert Caldervey. The Bible says that Nebuchadnezzar boasted of having built Babylon. But all the ancient historians, Theodorus, Herodotus, Pliny, even the Babylonian historian Berosus, they all said that Babylon was built by Queen Semiramis. Sorry, girls, it's not a blow for women's lib. Queen Semiramis is a myth. She never existed. But Nebuchadnezzar, whom the Bible said built Babylon, did exist, and is true. There are those people who, you're wondering about whether Church of England clergymen are taught about prophecy. No, they're taught, well, Daniel wrote, someone pretending to be Daniel wrote the book of Daniel, because he wrote it much later and he just dressed it up as prophecy, you see. He wrote it much later. And so one of these critics, a man called Professor Pfeiffer, was absolutely puzzled. We shall presumably never know just how our author, how Daniel, learned that the new Babylon was the creation of Nebuchadnezzar, as the excavations prove. Fancy the Bible being right. How extraordinary. How could they possibly have known this? Well, there you go. Of course, we know it because of the cuneiform records, such as the Babylonian Chronicle. Now, this is the 6th tablet of the Babylonian Chronicle, and it tells the story of how Jerusalem was captured by King Nebuchadnezzar. And I have here a replica of it. Richard, would you like to take it around? I'm reluctant to pass it around from hand to hand because it's fragile. It's not as precious as the original, of course.
Not that big, is that the size of it?
Yes. And here's another tablet. This is from Tel El Amarna in Egypt. Would you like to do honors? Now, the Bible also records about the fall of Babylon. And it says that the last king of Babylon made a great feast, and his name was Belshazzar. Okay? Next up. And there were those, like our dear friend Professor Pfeiffer, who said, oh, yeah. This time we've got the Bible, because it wasn't Belshazzar. It was a chap called Nabonidus. And all the ancient historians said, yes, it was Nabonidus. Nabonidus was the last king of Babylon. No question about Nabonidus. So when this man, Hormuzd-Rassam, went to Babylon and did some dig, he wasn't really an archaeologist, he just dug to see what he could find, and he found a tablet. And by this time, people could read cuneiform. And it turned out to be a cylinder, rather broken, and it was written written at the command of Cyrus, the Persian, the man who captured Babylon. And he would know who the last king of Babylon was, wouldn't he? He did. And he said, I captured Babylon from Nabonidus. Oh, dear. Now, you remember I told you about this man Taylor who went to Ur and dug down in the... He didn't find anything apart from in the four corners of the ziggurat, he found a couple of clay cylinders. Here's one of them. In those days, they couldn't read cuneiform, so he didn't know what it was, but it was the only thing he found, so he shipped it back to the British Museum. Later on, when they could read cuneiform, they were reading the important things, they'd forgotten all about these. It wasn't until some years later, some years after the Cyrus cylinder was found, that they found this cylinder, and it was a prayer by Nabonidus who had repaired the ziggurat. And he begged the god Marduk to be kind and to bless him and to bless his son, Belshazzar. You see any resemblance there? Belshazzar. And would you believe the person who first translated this, a man by the name of Theophilus Picres, he wrote a report. He said, well, of course, we know there was no such person as Belshazzar in the Bible, but at least we know where the name came from. And then another tablet was discovered. It's now in the Pergamon Museum. This is the front and the back of it. And it is the Nabonidus Chronicle. And it tells a fascinating story of how Nabonidus, in the second year of his reign, he was campaigning in the Lebanon and he fell ill. And he called for the doctors. The doctors came and looked at him. They felt his pulse. They looked at his tongue, which is about all they could do in those days. And they went, shh. And when the doctor does that, you know you've got problems. And they said, we can't do anything for you. Best thing you can do is make your will. And so Nabonidus said, right, I'm going to make sure the succession is safe. And he called for his eldest son, Belshazzar, and he had him crowned at the foot of his bed. And with that off his mind, he felt so much better. He went to sleep. And when he woke up in the morning, he was even better. And he got completely better. Which was a problem, because what do you do when you've crowned your eldest son king? Do you say, sorry, me boy, pass the crown back? Not if you want a long life for yourself. So he did something very clever. He said, my boy, you can be king of Babylon. You can have the capital city and the province around it. I'll be king of the empire. And he actually went off to northern Arabia and lived there and ruled the empire from there, while his son was the king of Babylon, the city. All right? And you know, the Bible actually preserves that, if only we had known how to read it properly. Because when Belshazzar saw the writing on the wall, you can read the story for yourself in Daniel chapter 5, and he offered a reward, the biggest reward he could think of, to anyone who would translate it for him. He said that whoever translates it for me, whoever reads it, translates it, you'll get a gold chain, you'll be clothed in purple, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Why didn't he say you can be second ruler? Because he was himself the second ruler. You see? He couldn't give any higher reward than that of third ruler. And again, dear old Professor Pfeiffer is scratching his head. We shall presumably never know how our author learned that Belshazzar, mentioned only in Babylonian records, in Daniel and in Baruch, which is based on Daniel, was functioning as king when Cyrus took Babylon. It's a puzzle, isn't it? How the Bible can be right. Never understand it. There we go. Well, Babylon also has undergone a lot of changes, mainly thanks to dear old Saddam Hussein, who wanted to see himself as king of Babylon, and he wanted to have a luxurious palace there. And so all this area up here has been rebuilt and renovated by him. But in my time, I have spent three nights and 4 days in Babylon at different times. And of course, I've wandered all over the place, including down here, which looks like nothing on earth, and is nothing on earth, but it's the remains of the Tower of Babel, of the ziggurat of Babel. And the interesting thing is that it's surrounded by water. Through the prophet Isaiah, God said, I am going to do some nasty things to Babylon. Again, you can read it all for yourself. But this is what God actually said. I will make it a possession for the bittern and pools of water. A modern translation says, I'll make it swampland. And I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, says the Lord of hosts. And for some reason, unlike just about every other site, instead of being dry as a bone, Babylon is soggy. You cannot dig down deeper than the level of Nebuchadnezzar II, because the water just comes gushing in. It's all mud. You can't excavate liquid mud, you know. And there it is, pools of water. How did Isaiah know that Babylon would be water? And he doesn't say anything about the other places, but they all turned out dry. Why wasn't Babylon? All I know is that God told. And here's another thing God said. Babylon, the jewel of kingdoms, the pride and glory of the Babylonians, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. She will never be inhabited or lived in through all generations. There no nomads will pitch their tents. There no shepherds will rest their flocks. But desert creatures will lie there. Jackals will fill their houses. On one of the visits to Babylon, I went with my father. He wanted to climb up onto the summer palace of Nebuchadnezzar to see what was up there. And as we walked across from the road, we were startled by something rushing out of the bushes. It was a jackal. So we've seen jackals in the ruins of Babylon. I will sweep it with a besom of destruction, and no shepherds will take their flocks there. Now, as I said, I've spent 4 days and 3 nights in Babylon. Babylon is surrounded by villages. I'm sure those villages must have the occasional animal. But I have never seen those sheep and goats being pastured in Babylon. And other travelers have reported the same thing. I don't know why that is. I simply record the fact. You may interpret it how you will. But now let's go to the last place. Time is getting on, we need to push along. This is Mosul in northern Iraq, as it was before we started driving ISIS out. And this is Nabi Yunus, the grave of the prophet Jonah. Totally fraudulent, of course, but nonetheless. They built it up, and I was gnashing my teeth when I saw this photograph before ISIS got there. Because this is what it looked like when I first saw it. The mosque, formerly the church of Jonah, taken over by the Muslims, and it stands on top of a mound covering the palace of Esarhaddon, the Assyrian king. It is the only part of Nineveh that has not been excavated, because it's got a holy site on top of it, you see. And so underneath it is an untouched palace. Wow! I mean, all the others have been excavated by men who just dig to find a few things that they could send back to the museum. Here we can do some scientific excavation. Wow! And I'm happy to report that ISIS blew it up. Now, I regret everything else that they've blown up. I regret all the thousands of people they've killed, but I am glad they've blown this up, because I hope we'll be able to excavate before they rebuild it. Well, there we go. This is a suburb of Nabi Yunus, and all the way around it are walls. Once the mightiest walls on earth surrounding the largest city on earth. 7.5 miles around. That was one big city. Can you see the line of the walls? Nineveh was first excavated by a Frenchman called Bota, who started digging there, but he found that he was getting too many small boys pestering him, so he moved somewhere else further out in the desert, 10 miles away, at Khorsabad. But unfortunately, the things he discovered there that had been badly damaged when the palace burned down, and so he didn't really find very much. But while he was there, he was visited by a young Englishman called Henry Layard, who got the idea, and a few years later came back and did his own digging. He started digging at Khorsabad, at Kala, which is about 25 miles south. Now it's known as Nimrud. It was blown up by ISIS. He wrote a book, which I've read, and in it he tells of how he made his first big discovery. He wasn't actually on site when he made the discovery. The following morning, I'd ridden to the encampment of Sheikh Abdul Rahman and was returning to the mountain. I saw 2 Arabs of his tribe coming towards me and urging their mares to the top of their speed. On reaching me, they stopped. "Hasten, O Bey," exclaimed one of them, "hasten to the diggers, for they have found Nimrod himself. Oh Allah, it is wonderful, but it is true. We have seen him with our eyes. La ilaha, la ilaha." And off they went. And that's what they found. A huge human head. When they'd finally cleared it, it turned out to be a human-headed bull. And Layard decided to bring it back. It weighed 40 tons. And all he had to bring it back with was a bit of rope, a few Arabs, and some wood. And he built a cart, trolleyed it down to the Tigris River, set it afloat on blown-up goat skins, down to Basra, where it was taken over by the British Navy, and it and his companion now form one of the prizes of the British Museum. He also found this, an obelisk. He couldn't read what was written on it, wasn't even sure it was writing, but it had pictures of elephants and apes on it. And so he thought, oh, you know, they'll love this in the British Museum, so he brought it back. It turns out to be, now we know, by Sennacherib the Third. It's in pride of place in the museum, in the British Museum, because on it, never mind the apes and the elephants, is the only picture we have of a Hebrew king. This chappie bowing down is King Jehu. And the other stela, by the way, mentions King Ahab. All right? So all these biblical characters, they really lived, they really existed. They're not fairy tales, they actually exist. Now God said about Nineveh, he, that is God, will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, leaving Nineveh utterly desolate and dry as a desert. Flocks and herds will lie down there, creatures of every kind. Remember Babylon? No shepherds. Nineveh? Well, there they are. I've seen them. Dotted around all over the place. Can you see in the distance the walls of Nineveh? This is inside the city. This is one of the mounds. And if you think, well, yeah, but you know, Ken down and doctored the pictures, you can go to Wikipedia. And this is a picture on the site of Wikipedia, and guess what you can see? All right? Now you may look at that picture and say, hang on just a moment, God said it would be dry like the desert. But that's a pool of water I much mistook. It is, I suspect it had just rained, because this is what it really looks like. There are a few fields, the green bits, but the rest of it is all brown. If you want to know what the brown looks like, well, this is just outside Mosul, brown, and this is the same area from ground level. Believe me or believe me not, that is a field where they grow wheat. Dry like the desert. Now, the interesting thing is that when Zephaniah wrote that prophecy, Nineveh wasn't like this. Because if you search carefully on Google Earth, 25 miles to the north-northeast, you can find this. You're not impressed?
No, not yet.
Oh dear. People are not archaeologists. It looks like nothing on Earth, does it? But if you superimpose on it a photograph taken by the British when they were in Iraq, you can maybe perhaps make out something. It's been excavated. It turns out to be an aqueduct. Never mind Pontcasate, this is the Assyrian equivalent. This bit, from here to there, is 92 feet long. The channel is 72 feet wide. That's a lot of water. And the whole thing is almost 300 feet long. All right, this was pretty big civil engineering to make this. And King Sennacherib boasts of the gardens he made. A great park like Mount Amanus, wherein were set out all kinds of herbs and orchard fruits, trees such as grow on the mountains, and in Chaldea I planted beside the palace. To make the orchards luxurious from the border of the town of Kisiri to the plain about Nineveh, through mountain and lowland, with iron pickaxes, I cut and directed a canal. And this was just one of many canals that they made. This is what remains on the ground today of that construction. This is the bed of the canal, carefully lined with stones so the water doesn't all seep away. And on these stones are inscriptions by Sennacherib, saying, Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria. Over a great distance I had a watercourse directed to the environs of Nineveh, joined together the waters. Over steep-sided valleys I spanned an aqueduct of white limestone blocks. I made those waters flow over it. And the result was that at the time Zephaniah wrote, Nineveh looked like this. All right, now this is just 3 sites in Iraq. As I say, I could spend the rest of the day talking about the way in which the Bible has been shown to be true. And this is why I believe the Bible. Because the Bible is accurate history. It's not myths, it's not fairy tales, it's not legends, it is accurate history. Now, of course, it does contain stuff that you cannot test. You know, if it says that Sarah killed a kid and cooked it, you can't prove that archaeologically. But where you can test it, it proves to be accurate, remarkably accurate. And as well as accurate history, it also contains fulfilled prophecy, often fulfilled in detail. God's challenge to the nations, to the heathen gods, was set forth your arguments. Tell us what the former things were. Can you tell us accurate history? If you can, good for you. I can. Or tell us the things to come, so that we may know that you are gods. Can you tell the future? I can. The Bible is unique among holy books. The Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the scriptures of the Buddhists, all the rest of them, many of them have got some wonderful moral teachings in them. But how do we know they're true? Because they don't have prophecy, they don't have history. They're just what people thought. And they may be good, they may be worth reading, but how do you know they're true? But the Bible, you can say, where you can test it, it is true. And so the science of archaeology has given us evidence that the Bible is true. Now, evidence is not proof, but it is sufficient for the thinking person who wants to say, is believing the Bible reasonable? And the answer is yes.